consent that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President, as you well know, the Senate has confirmed 194 of President Biden's judicial nominees to lifetime appointments. Each of these nominees has been questioned about their qualifications and credentials, and as the Senate provided advice and consent on their nominations, they move forward. But Adeel Mangi, nominated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, has faced unprecedented and fundamentally unfair personal attacks. Senate Republicans and dark money groups have made bigoted and false claims about Mr. Mangi, the first Muslim American nominated to the federal appellate court. Rather than focusing on Mr. Mangi's qualifications or credentials during the hearing that he was subjected to in December, Republicans subjected him to irrelevant, combative lines of questionings about the Israel-Hamas war. They even asked whether he celebrated September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. Can you imagine? With no basis in his life experience, the fact that he was Muslim gave them license to ask whether or not in his home they celebrated September 11th. Throughout his confirmation process, Mr. Mangi has unequivocally condemned anti-Semitism and acts of terrorism. Republican senators have tried to scapegoat Mr. Mangi for statements made by other people at events he didn't even attend and wasn't even aware of. That is simply guilt by association, and it's wrong. Any claim that Mr. Mangi is anti-Semitic is simply false. Yet just this week, the Republican leader falsely claimed that Mr. Mangi's confirmation would lead to, quote, radicalism on the federal bench. The fact that this man will be the first Muslim American allows these wild accusations to take place, and it's unfair. To claim that Mr. Mangi is, quote, radical ignores his record. For more than 2 decades, he has focused on commercial litigation at a top-tier law firm. He has served as counsel of record in more than 30 matters before federal appellate courts, as well as 8 amicus briefs submitted to the U.S. Supreme Court. In addition, Mr. Mangi has devoted more than 4,000 hours to his pro bono practice, representing clients in religious discrimination and employment discrimination cases. Mr. Mangi deserves to be evaluated based on his record, not on bad faith falsehoods and innuendo. I urge my colleagues to dismiss the smear campaign against him and support his nomination. Mr. President, on another matter, I'd like to discuss an issue that has been personal to me and a priority for more than 20 years, the young immigrants known as the Dreamers. It was a little over 20 years ago that I introduced the first DREAM Act. Before that, people discussed the Dreamers in terms of a rock and roll group from Great Britain. Now the Dreamers are known as young people who were brought to the United States as children with no decision on their own part, grew up in this country, pledged allegiance to this American flag in their classrooms, and simply want to be part of the future of America. That's what this is all about. Many have gone on to serve our nation as first responders, nurses, and members of the armed forces. They are American in every way, except under our law. And without congressional action, they still spend each day in fear of deportation. I first introduced the DREAM Act 23 years ago. I've reintroduced it for the last several Congresses with my friend, the senior senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham. The DREAM Act would provide a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers. On several occasions, a bipartisan majority of senators have voted for the DREAM Act on the floor of the Senate, but it's been blocked by filibuster each time. 12 years ago, in response to a bipartisan request from myself and the late Senator Richard Lugar, Republican of Indiana, President Obama established DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Since 2012, DACA has protected from deportation more than 830,000 young people, all of whom arrived in our country as children, some as young as a few months old. Today, I want to share the story of one of those impressive individuals who has received DACA protection. This is the 142nd story of the Dreamer that I have shared on the Senate floor. Brian Garcia Valdez came to the United States from Mexico when he was 10 years old. He grew up in South Texas. He graduated from high school with honors in the top 10% of his class. Because of Brian's immigration status, he wasn't eligible for financial aid to go to college. So he worked jobs, multiple jobs, waiter, washing cars, construction, all to support his tuition cost at Texas A&M. After 4 years of hard work, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in biology in 2017. Brian is now a medical student at Loyola Stritch College School of Medicine in my home state of Illinois. And I want to give a shout out to the school. Loyola School of Medicine was the first in the nation to open up the competition for the limited number of slots they have to DACA students. They've had over 30 so far. There's no quota, there's no allotment of a certain number. These students just have to compete with everyone else and show that they're ready to excel at medicine. In addition to a busy academic schedule, Brian has worked as a clinic coordinator in a health clinic assisting medically underserved communities. He also received the 2023 DREAM MD Physicians of Tomorrow Scholarship for academic excellence. Brian will graduate next week. He plans to attend the University of Rochester Medical Center for his medical residency. After completing his training, he hopes to return to South Texas to serve medically underserved areas. DACA allowed Brian to pursue his dream of being a doctor, but his life is still in limbo because of the inaction of Congress. Since President Obama established the DACA program, many Republicans, have waged a relentless campaign to overturn DACA and deport the Dreamers back to the countries that many of them don't even remember being part of. Last September, one federal judge in Texas declared DACA illegal as a program. The decision left in place protections for current DACA recipients while the appeal is pending, but has left them in constant fear that any day another court decision will upend their lives. The lower court decision also has prevented any more Dreamers from registering for the program. This means that without congressional action, thousands of Dreamers who already serve our country as doctors, teachers, or first responders may never have that opportunity. Next week, I'll hold a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee on the urgent need to protect these inspiring young people. It's time for Congress to grant them the stability and certainty in their lives that they so richly deserve. When you look at this individual, Brian Garcia Valdez, you ask yourself the question, now as he is on his path, on his way to becoming a medical doctor in the United States, and he wants to serve underserved people in South Texas who don't have access to a good doctor, is our message from Congress to him to go back to where you came from? That's basically the issue before us. Is America a better country with Dr. Brian Garcia Valdez in its ranks? You bet it is. Let's not lose this opportunity to bring these quality individuals into full citizenship. I yield the floor. Suggest the evidence of the quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.